The Jackson Dart era officially begins in New York. We reveal where we have him ranked while going through our week 4 quarterback and tight end fantasy rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today, we are going to go through our quarterback and tight end rankings for week 4. We'll get into our quarterbacks first and then finish up the episode with our tight end rankings. And we're just going to jump right into this. At the top for our quarterbacks, we have the exact same 3 guys in the same order. Josh Allen at number 1, Jalen Hurts at number 2, Lamar Jackson at number 3. But then things will get a little bit different for us. At number 4, you have Baker Mayfield against the Eagles, despite him not having Mike Evans and despite the Eagles having a very good pass defense. So why are you so confident in him this week? Because I'm pretty low on Baker this week. I have him at quarterback 13.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles' pass defense is a little bit leaky at this point. And I get it, he's down a receiver, but there's some rumors that Chris Godwin could also return this week, so that'll be interesting. But I think Baker's going to have to throw a ton in this game. I think the Eagles are going to control the action. The Bucs defense, look, is not all that right now. They can stop the run a little bit, but we saw the Eagles can accelerate even if Saquon Barkley is quiet here. That means they could attack through the air quite a bit with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. If Jalen Hurts is going to have a pretty big game and the Eagles are in control of this thing, they remember last year against the Buccaneers, it was kind of a disaster that kick-started their offensive transformation that game. So they're going to remember that. They're going to be clicking all cylinders. Again, the Bucs are going to have to put up some points going the other way. I think there are going to be some Bucky Irving check downs, throwing a little bit to Emeka Egbuka in key high leverage situations. So I think there's enough there where Baker can produce, and he's going to have to throw a lot. I would not be surprised if he clears 300 yards in this one. Again, if they fall behind, I think that is a scenario. Look, the Bucs have fallen behind in all 3 games at some point. I know they were in control of that Jets game, but still needed Baker late in the 4th quarter to win that game. So Eagles are the best competition they faced all season long. So you figure they're going to trail. You figure they're going to be throwing a lot in the second half. And that's where Baker's going to get it done, because Jalen Hurts is going to get it done on the other side. And again, the Eagles just have enough holes in the passing game where I think Mayfield puts up those numbers.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more weary on him this week. Just last year without Evans, one solid game, another okay game, and one bad game. We'll see what he can do, but the Eagles have yet to allow either any of the quarterbacks they went against even have 200 passing yards or more than 2 passing touchdowns. So he's going to have to use his legs a lot, which he has been doing. So maybe he can continue to do that. Now, moving forward, we both have Jaden Daniels high. You have him at quarterback 5. I have him at 6. If he's back from the knee injury, you play him, especially against that Falcons defense that's just struggling right now. But 2 guys that we're feeling confident in, Caleb Williams, I have at 5. And then Justin Herbert, who I have at my quarterback 4. You're a little bit lower on both, but by barely. You have Herbert at 6, Caleb Williams at 7. I like both of their matchups, and Caleb Williams has been on fire. He's a quarterback 3 so far on the season behind Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Marcus Mariota just put up 20.3 fantasy points against the Raiders last week, and that's who Caleb Williams will be facing this week. And then with Herbert, it was a down game for him in week 3 in terms of like passing production. He still had 300 or passing touchdown production. He still had 300 passing yards, but only 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I don't think the Giants defense is scary at all, right? They did hold Mahomes in check, but that happens for a lot of Mahomes games. Jaden Daniels and Dak Prescott both had really good fantasy days against the Giants. So I'm liking both of these quarterbacks this week.
Yeah, the Giants also give up a lot of big plays downfield. We saw that with Tyquan Thornton. We know how Quentin Johnston's been going early here as a deep threat for Justin Herbert. That's good news. They also can struggle with coverage elsewhere. That's great news for Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen. So all these weapons should be fired up. Omari and Hampton in a potential smash spot as well. Without Najee Harris, the Giants are the most giving team to fantasy back. So you figure there's going to be some play action opportunities here for Justin Herbert to go wild, to play off that, throw down field. I just think it's going to be a total beatdown look, and this might be actually good if you're trying to stream another quarterback in this game who's not Russell Wilson. We'll get into that in a little while, but Caleb Williams, again, can smash it here. I mean, Marcus Mariota can put up that game. Look, partly Mariota's numbers were revenge game. By the way, Mariota would have another revenge game against the Falcons this week, just how it could work out. If you're desperate and you don't have great options without Daniels or in your Superflex league, you can look there. But Williams for sure needs to be in one quarterback league, two quarterback leagues. The matchup with the Raiders, too great. I think it's going to be a lot of Bears fans out there in the desert as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as my quarterback 7, I'm going high on Drake May this week, all the way at 7. The Panthers, getting the Panthers is not the best thing for fantasy quarterbacks, but I do think Drake May has shown a lot, not only with his arm, but with his legs as well. 45 rushing yards this past week. That was a season high for him. And he had 2 passing touchdowns with 268 passing yards. He should have had a 3rd passing touchdown. The guy was wide open, but Cam Hayward got his hand up and tipped the ball at the line of scrimmage just to kind of ruin that for him, and it turned into an interception. But I think he just continues to get it done. And yeah, the Panthers have faced Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, and Michael Penix and haven't allowed much. But again, none of those 3 guys are very scary, right? So I think Drake May is a really good play this week.
Yeah, Drake May also should have some family around or whatever paying close attention. He is from Charlotte, so he's playing his hometown team this week. Bryce Young's on the other side. Look, I had a little bit of pause. I dropped him down to 11 only because I just had to think about the Panthers' defense. Look, you just had to worry about them a little bit. It's not like Drake May was spectacular against the Steelers' defense. He was fine. He's a compiler. He's going to find a way to get to those numbers that you're looking for. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to go to the receivers you think. It's probably going to go a lot to the tight end. Hopefully Travion Henderson gets unlocked a little bit in the passing game to help Drake May. May's going to run a little bit, but he's going to be, in most weeks, unless the matchup is totally brutal, he's going to be a top 12 option every single week. So, look, we know how it's going to go, right? You have him 7, I have 11. He'll probably finish at 9 this week, but that's fine. We'll take it. Anyway, you drafted him to be a weekly starter. That's what he's kind of been so far, even with some down weeks.
Now at number 8, we both have Patrick Mahomes against the Ravens. Mm-hmm. At number 9, I have Daniel Jones against the Rams. You're a little bit lower on him, but he's been balling out. It's hard to sit him right now. And then for your number 9, you have Justin Fields if he returns at Miami. And I'm right there with you. I have him at quarterback 10. I know the last time we saw him, it was atrocious fantasy week, right? 4 fantasy points in week 2. And again, he didn't leave the game with an injury until very late in the game. So it didn't really have anything to do with that. But in week 1, fantastic fantasy performance with 30 fantasy points. He has had at least 48 rushing yards in both of the 2 games. The Dolphins defense absolutely stinks. Daniel Jones, Drake May, Josh Allen, all scored at least 23 fantasy points in their matchup against the Dolphins this week. And they've already allowed 3 rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks, with Fields getting 2 rushing touchdowns in his first week played. So I think Fields has a really good game on the ground, and there's no reason he can't also do it through the air against the secondary.
Yeah, just watch out for being cleared from the concussion protocol. He does get an extra day because they do play on Monday, so that gives him a little extra time, right, to get ready and go into action here. So I do like that potential here with just Justin Fields getting back on track. I think this offense, look, the Bills were a buzzsaw that they faced, and they were just looking to rip people to shreds, and they have done that so far early in the season. So, look, so you throw out that game, Fields, again, when he faces a weak defense that's kind of dysfunctional the way the Dolphins are, he's going to be just fine. So let's hope he's back in the lineup to give us a strong option this week.
We will continue our quarterback rankings after a quick break. You have Jordan Love at number 10 this week against that terrible Cowboys defense, and I don't mind it. We'll get to that and the rest of our quarterback and tight end rankings right after we hear from a couple of our sponsors. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. I always reach for my favorite flavor, the blue raspberry, because it's refreshing and gives me that quick lift before a busy day. I love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later or ingesting unnecessary calories. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to get your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. All right, at quarterback number 10, you have Jordan Love against the Packers. It's been an up and down season for Jordan Love so far in fantasy. 2 weeks, not very happy with him. And then week 2, he had a solid performance with 21 fantasy points. This last week, he had a really, really tough matchup at Cleveland. It was his first away game, but also it was a tough defense, right? He faced only 11 fantasy points. The Cowboys, on the other hand, are atrocious defense. So it's going to be completely opposite for him. Jalen Hurts, Russell Wilson, and Caleb Williams all scored at least 24 fantasy points against this Cowboys defense, with Caleb Williams scoring 29 last week. So Jordan Love at quarterback 10, I don't mind that. I have him at quarterback 14, but I actually do think he's a really good play this week.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened to these quarterbacks. Right? Russell Wilson plays the Cowboys. He's benched just 2 weeks later. So that tells you what the Cowboys meant. Nothing, because everyone knows you can rip them apart. Caleb Williams, when is Caleb Williams' breakout game coming? He plays the Cowboys. The breakout game came. So, look, Jordan Love, questions about him last week after the loss. Get well game on the schedule. Now, they want Micah Parsons to have a big night in his return. How do they do that? They have to play with a big lead. How do they do that? Be aggressive in the passing game. Get this game put away. They didn't do that with the Browns. They left them lingering around, let them run the ball effectively, and the Cowboys have proved they can do that with Javonte Williams. So part of the game script also you have to look at is the Packers need to get some big plays. Matthew Golden was getting unlocked at the end of the game last week, not enough earlier in the game. I think they could do that early. Get him a big play. The rookie, Tucker Kraft, should be more involved now that he's a little removed from the injury. So all these things add up to a big Jordan Love day in Dallas.
Now, another quarterback that's had an up and down season, I have as my quarterback 11 this week. It's Bo Nix against the Bengals. And it has a lot to do with just who they get to face, right? And they get to face this Bengals team that on one side of the ball, they can't do anything. And we expect Jake Browning, or whoever the quarterback is, to have turnovers against this Broncos defense to give the Broncos even more chances on offense. But Bo Nix also is at home. He's been running a little bit more, at least this last week. He had 33 rushing yards. Now, 2 games so far this year has been really bad for his fantasy production. 1 good game. But like I said, I do expect this to be a good enough matchup where you can plug in Bo Nix. And he can have like a Trevor Lawrence-like performance where Trevor Lawrence put up 19 points against the Bengals in week 2.
Yeah, the Bengals are not scary. It's also at home. That's where we like to play Bo Nix last year. That's his comfort level. He's not as good on the road quite yet as a second-year younger-ish quarterback. So when we look at that, I mean, yeah, Bo Nix needed the Bengals defense. They still have some holes he can exploit pretty well here. The only question is, are they going to have to put it up a lot here? I think Jake Browning will be a little bit more competitive. I think the Bengals as an entire team were just not prepared for that game in Minnesota. They have to. Desperate times are calling for. They don't want to fall to 500. So Nix is going to be solid. I won't expect a spectacular game, but I think you get a solid work out of him this week. Now, Brock Purdy's a question mark, right? I mean, it looks like he may return. Mac Jones had 1 big fantasy game. He had 1 modest fantasy game, right? They didn't score enough touchdowns in week 2, or sorry, the second week that he started against the Cardinals. So it's a revenge game for Mac Jones if he plays, A. B, Brock Purdy looks like he might have a red-hot Ricky Pearsall with him this week, right? So is that enough? If Juwan Jennings misses a game and you don't have George Kittle, is Ricky Pearsall and Christian McCaffrey enough for you, Michelle, to trust Brock Purdy in his return there against Jacksonville? Jaguars' defense is playing better, but I don't think it's totally shut down.
Yeah, I'm fine with playing Brock Purdy if he's back, and I do expect him to be back. He was a game time decision this past week. Mac Jones got banged up in week 3. I don't even know if he'd be able to play anyways. So I do think Purdy is going to come back for this game. We both have him ranked as our quarterback 12. And like you said, he still has enough weapons with Christian McCaffrey and Ricky Pearsall. Hopefully, Juwan Jennings can come back. But and the Jaguars defense, I'm not taking seriously. I mean, they played 2 quarterbacks that have often not done much, right, at all, in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, especially for fantasy. And then in week 2 against the Bengals, they allowed 24 combined fantasy points between Burrow and Jake Browning. So when we see them actually face an offense with weapons and an offensive line that can protect and quarterbacks that can pass, it's been you could still pass on the Jaguars. So I'm not worried about that, and I think you can play them. Now, what are we doing with Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott? I do have Kyler Murray as my quarterback 15. Dak, I'm putting way down at quarterback 24 against this Packers defense. You're with me with putting Dak Prescott low in the ranks at 21. You have Kyler Murray at quarterback 18. They both just been so disappointing this year, and neither one gets an easy opponent at all, with Murray getting the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's for different reasons. I mean, yeah, the Packers matchup is brutal at home against them. And then also look at CeeDee Lamb. I mean, the status of CeeDee Lamb is very much up in the air. Like, they're hopeful, they're optimistic. He won't miss time, but he went back in the game, got hurt. He had to disappear. So
it
they're
sounds
going to be
like
careful.
he's going to miss at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think they have to be careful with him. I mean, you don't want to blow him in a season that doesn't seem to be going anywhere, right? For the Cowboys, you got to keep one of your investments going forward. So I think no for him. So it's going to be a lot of George Pickens and Jake Ferguson. It could help their fantasy value, but you don't want to play Dak as a whole. With Kyler Murray, look, Marvin Harrison Jr. is dropping the ball. It's not looking good. Trey McBride is doing his thing, but there's not a lot else. We knew that in this passing game. And if Kyler Murray, again, does not say, I'm going to take over the game on the ground running, you're not going to get the floor you need or the ceiling. If the passing game is not there, the Seahawks are not a good matchup right now. They are really shutting down receivers at this point. I know they played the Saints last week. 49ers got a break in that game as well. And Steelers, of course, with the way that game went. But I don't think those numbers are totally off. I think the Seahawks are still a tough defense to face on the back end, especially for a slumping wide receiver such as Marvin Harrison. So keep in mind, that is kind of the whole thing, right? Where are the weapons? Where's he thrown to? If the running is not there and his number one wide receiver is not getting it done, it's really hard to see where the numbers come from. So I'm down on Kyler Murray, and I also do not like the matchup against Seattle, even though it's at home.
Yeah. Now, with these, some quarterback injuries around the league, with some disappointing players as well, would you go with any of these quarterbacks with confidence? Either Jackson Dart, who's getting his first start in the NFL for the Giants, or benching Russell Wilson against the Chargers. Not the best matchup to have to go against. Carson Wentz against the Steelers. He had a good game in his first start with the Vikings, but I mean, they're up by so much, they didn't really need him. So it wasn't a huge fantasy day. Or Bryce Young at the Patriots, who has had one good fantasy day so far this year. Which of those 3 would you go with?
Yeah, I actually do like Carson Wentz quite a bit this week. I think it's between him and Bryce Young. Honestly, like Jackson Dart, I do not want to play against the Chargers defense. They've allowed the last 2 opponents to be under 200 yards passing. It was only Mahomes going nuts a little bit with the rushing and the touchdowns in week 1. So Mahomes was the one game they gave up. Jackson Dart starting against the Chargers defense is a very tough spot. They do get, however, the Saints in New Orleans in week 5. So Jackson Dart certainly playable. You got 4 teams on bye in week 5. So let's table him for this week. Bryce Young is starting to warm up as an idea that we like. I think the guy with the floor maybe is Carson Wentz. The guy with the ceiling maybe is a Bryce Young this week. So again, Wentz I could see getting a couple of touchdowns in that Steelers matchup, especially if the Steelers make that game quite competitive in Dublin on Sunday morning for our time. So again, I'm going Wentz barely, but I think Wentz and Young would be the choices. I just wouldn't extend to Dart quite yet this week.
Yeah, I think Young's a playable guy, and I'm with you with Wentz. I mean, obviously, starting Wentz at any moment is very, very risky, but the Steelers'
Yeah.
secondary has been bad. They should be able to run on them as well to open up the passing game. So I don't mind starting Wentz. And also, Geno Smith is another option that you can go
Right.
with if you're desperate
Sure.
for a guy. Had a big game this last week in week 3, and he gets the Bears defense. So those are some options you have. I would also like to wait on Jackson Dart, right? Like, it's his first. I know he looked really good in the preseason. It's still his first game. I'm not saying he can't do well, but against this Chargers defense, that's just too risky for me. So you would have to be going really, really deep and have really no
Right.
other options to go there. We are going to transition over to our tight end rankings for week 4 right after we hear from one of our sponsors.
All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is all the way here. That means FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff in week 4 with a can't miss offer. Yeah, hard to believe we're almost a quarter through the entire 2025 season. Right now is the right time to act, because right now new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. With FanDuel, it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keep an eye on your fantasy lineup to see how they're doing in their games and adding up to wins or losses. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little extra energy and something more exciting to your Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. FanDuel, get in the action ahead of week 4. All right, Michelle, time to close the show. And yes, we're going to do a pivot all the way to tight end rankings this week. We can quickly go through our top 3, which are the exact same. Trey McBride in a really good matchup against the Seahawks to kick things off on Thursday. You have Brock Bowers facing the Bears defense, and Tucker Kraft gets that Cowboys defense. So that was the easy top 3, right? The way that we looked at the matchups, the talent, all there. Now we deviate a little bit. So, Michelle, you've got Sam Laporte at number 4. I've got Dalton Kincaid at number 4. So let's start right up there with Dalton Kincaid. Here's the reason I'm pretty high on him. I think the matchup says he could have a big game against the Saints. I just think he's getting used more and more, right? I mean, they don't really have a true go-to guy between Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman and some of these other dudes they're using. But Dalton Kincaid might be actually developing into that player that we thought, right? And you're seeing that happen here early. He's a first-round player with a lot of talent, so that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, we are finally seeing production out of Kincaid, which has been really nice. 12.8 points and 15.1 points in 2 of the 3 games, with a disappointing game against the Jets. My only concern is that the Bills are just going to absolutely wallop the Saints, right? And they just don't have to pass. And they could just run, get up high. So, like, Dalton Kincaid's going to need his receptions and a touchdown in the first half, because I just don't think this game is going to be close whatsoever. It's in Buffalo. Yeah. The Bills just destroyed at home no matter who they face, really. And the Saints are probably the worst team in the NFL. So that's my concern with Dalton Kincaid. That's why I have him at tight end 10. But I think he's like, if you have him, you can definitely keep playing him. Now, what about Juwan Johnson in that same game? He's been on a roll with his targets. 2 good games, and last week he didn't get the touchdown, but still had 6 for 51. I mean, you can't ask for much more from your tight end besides, wanting that touchdown. But I think you can play both of these guys with confidence this week.
Yeah, Juwan Johnson, keep in mind, just the Bills have allowed the fewest to tight ends. They haven't faced any tight ends except for Mark Andrews, which was a silent game for him in week 1. So we can't totally ignore that, especially if after Andrews got going on Monday night there in that big 2 touchdown game and the loss to the Lions. So we totally can't ignore that. Juwan Johnson, look, he's all that the Saints have. There could be some garbage time there. I think there's room for both tight ends to produce. He's just outside of my top 12 this week at 13. Like, if you need him, I totally understand that. Michelle has him at 9. So, again, he'll probably finish at 11, as we know how these things work out. And my 11 is actually a guy that we want to talk about real quick, TJ Hockenson with Carson Wentz. Do we like that situation better? Keep in mind that Hunter Henry of the Patriots scored twice on the Steelers' D. On this soil, is it going to get done in Dublin?
Yeah, I do. I do think it gets done. I liked him last week. He came through. I have him as my tight end 6 this week against the Steelers defense. Listen, with Carson Wentz, he had the connection with him, 5 for 49 and a touchdown on 6 targets. Also, you got to just be running more routes in this game because Christian Darrisaw was back, so they needed Hockenson to be in to block a fewer times. So I think that's huge. So not only did it look like their connection was off between he and JJ McCarthy, but since he had to be used to block so much, he just didn't have the opportunity. Now he will. So I'm gonna trust him. I'm gonna play him. I like him at tight end 6. And I do think tight end 11 is a little too low where you have him. Now, Tyler Warren, we both have as tight end 5. Down week in week 3, but you keep rolling with him. He's been fantastic. We brought up, I have Sam Laporta at 4. You have him at 6. And then where we have Hunter Henry, I have him at 7. And you have him at 9 with Jake Ferguson ahead of him at 8. And I have him right behind him at 8. So Hunter Henry and Jake Ferguson, we're saying are pretty solid plays this week. They're both getting the targets and the production. Ferguson does have, like, you might be worried about the Packers defense, but that's the one area you can actually beat the Packers. And Zach Ertz had 64 yards and a touchdown against them in week 2. Sam Laporta, 6 receptions, 79 yards against them in week 1. David Njoku, 5 for 40, but it's not like he's done doing anything else the rest of the year either. So I do think the matchup's not bad for Ferguson, and he's going to get all those targets without CeeDee Lamb there. He already has 26 over the last 2 weeks. He just doesn't get touchdowns. So you have to just deal with that. And then Hunter Henry is very much the touchdown guy, right?
Yeah.
And the Panthers have, like, their defense has gotten more solid, but still, I'm not worried about them.
Yeah, Hunter Henry is going to start developing to be more of a regular play, I think, going forward. There's definitely that chemistry we were talking about a lot in the preseason between him and Drake May. It's almost like him and Mac Jones part 2, right? Going all the way back to Mac Jones' rookie season 2021. So Hunter Henry probably hasn't felt this connection with the quarterback for a while, right? So that's also helping, and he's a good red zone target as well. And look, between Kayshon Boutte and Stephon Diggs and the wide receivers, it's exactly happening like we thought. There's nobody reliable there, so Henry is definitely the go-to guy. Now, Mark Andrews, I have him at 10. I did this maybe with recency bias while I was watching the Lions-Ravens matchup here. But, again, you have a 13. Travis Kelce, I'm actually high on this week. I have him all the way up at 7. You've got Kelce at 11. They're playing each other in the same game. Do we trust these guys? Maybe it's throwback to the clock. Maybe they'll motivate each other on either side. This could be a high-scoring game, which would also help their chances to produce.
Yeah. I mean, with Mark Andrews, it's so hard, right? Because the first 2 weeks, he destroyed you if you played him. He scored 1.9 combined points over the first 2 weeks. And then people give up on him, and he goes off for 2 touchdowns, 91 yards, and 6 receptions. Now, one of those touchdowns was a long, late touchdown in garbage time. He was just wide open, right? I don't think that's going to happen against the Chiefs, against this defense. So already right there, he gets pushed down a little bit. I don't expect him to have this massive game. I don't know what to do with Mark Andrews. I really don't. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you want to start him because you don't have any other good options, that's fine, right? Because there's not a lot of good options out there on waivers. But I do prefer Travis Kelce slightly, just because the targets will at least be there. He might not have the production, but at least you feel more confident in him actually being involved in this offense. With Mark Andrews, you never know if he's just going to completely disappear.
Yeah, they could be a Zay Flowers game. It could be a little bit of Rashad Bateman. It could be random Tez Walker. It could be Tylan Wallace. Like Lamar, as they mentioned, he doesn't care. He's going to spread around whoever's open. Andrews happened to be the isolated guy that he could get going in that game. And so Lions, you're right. One came in garbage time, but Kelce, again, has a decent matchup. The Ravens did struggle with Dalton Kincaid in week 1. They haven't looked great overall. The Browns tight ends kind of worked them over a little bit, right? They've had some injuries also in the secondary, so that's hurt them as well. So again, I do trust Kelce a little bit more than Andrews, but I would not be surprised if Andrews finds the end zone again and has another decent game.
Yes, absolutely. All right. That is going to be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen of the day. For your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Man Roland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be back tomorrow going through our wide receiver rankings for week 4. So don't miss that. We'll talk to you then. Bye, y'all.